Hi guys, Sky here. We have Stormy here.
What's up?
So the latest episode of WandaVision, the epic conclusion to this nine-part story, finally released this past Friday, and it was basically the a start to a larger story in the whole like Marvel Cinematic Universe. And at the same time, it was like a conclusion to Wanda and her story. And what did you think about how this all went down, Stormy?
I definitely like the build up. I felt like the White Vision was interesting. Just kind of like being there, the way that they did him, I feel like was well. Of course, like we have the end credits to talk about, but I feel like the structure of like the episode going into that was really well done. Especially kind of like the first initial fight and the encounter between Wanda, the soldiers, and then Agatha. Um, I feel like up to that point, it felt like it was like a really constructive like fight, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, this whole show was unlike anything we've really seen from MCU.
Hmm.
Like, obviously, how this show started, like the whole sitcom premise, like going for through the episodes leading up to this finale, and it was I thought they ended it well, and it felt because a lot of people had been like speculating throughout weeks, theories, rumors about how this show was gonna set up like more things. And I mean, like that would be good, but then you think about it, and like at the end of the day, like this show is about Wanda. It's not trying to set up something else. So considering that, for your first Marvel MCU series, they did really good in my opinion. And some key points I wanted to point out from this finale were first of all, that big troll with Quicksilver. How did you feel about that, Stormy?
It kind of, honestly, in a way, it kind of didn't surprise me, but it kind of also made me think like, okay, like they're doing that for a reason. Um, it's kind of similar to like what we were saying last time, where we weren't quite sure how like it was gonna matter going forward, and I feel like I kind of saw this coming in a way, but like not necessarily the way they did it.
Yeah, I mean, we should have seen this like way before, because we've Marvel has trolled us before, like with Iron Man 3, how that Mandarin reveal was an epic troll by them, and obviously, like we're gonna see the Mandarin finally in Shang-Chi, um, when that ends up releasing. So, I'm curious if we know Doctor Strange is called the Multiverse of Madness, so I'm curious if they'll end up actually using Quicksilver, but in a different way. Because I mean, what they did here was uh, unexpected, but at the same time, like expected when you look at what they've done before. So yeah, I mean, it was a good troll. Like it didn't bother me. Uh, but yeah, um, another point from this episode was, how did you feel about this whole sort of like battle and at the same time like connection with White Vision and like the regular Vision we know?
Like I liked it. I feel like it was really well done. Of course, like there's some things that I thought like they were gonna do. I thought they were gonna try to pull like a kind of like a reverse like situation where like he takes the form of the other one, especially when they were like touching each other and trying to like talk, especially like towards the end of that fight. it made me feel like there was some sort of like other like motive. Obviously, like that didn't end up panning out entirely, but it seemed like to me like that was a really like productive way to permit that fight. Of course, like there's still things that we may not know, but in my opinion, I feel like that was done really well, and I liked how they had that little conversation.
Yeah, that moment actually felt really comic book like. Like it really stood out in my opinion. Um,
Agreed.
in 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 the comics, the Wanda and Vision comics, where White Vision is present, we've seen that sort of like interaction, and to see it sort of like executed like on in live action was really good, and I thought it worked well, and I mean obviously they changed some things up from the comics on White Vision's like introduction, but the way they did it worked well with the series in my opinion, and obviously we see him fly up into like the sun and we don't hear from him again, so that's probably going to be something that's going to be explored going forward.
Mm. And
um
it felt like the action part of it was also done really well. That surprised me a little bit. Just like the way they chose to go about it.
yeah. um how do you feel about like the whole White Vision setup for the future of the MCU? Like, do you see that being a big player with like Wanda's story, or what do you think?
I mean, I kind of thought like it sort of meant something else, like kind of like sort of like a metaphorical value, kind of like he's there but he's different. Um, and
Yeah,
I feel like that's kind of gonna play a lot in like the future, more like in relation to Vision's character. Of course, like like there's portions that we probably didn't know, but the memory swap, that they did, I feel like kind of gave that away. Kind of like oh, this could become like a potentially important character again. Because up until that point, it was just a figment of her reality on her end. So.
yeah. And one other thing about this White Vision that is different from like the MCU Vision, like the one before that we knew, this Vision has no emotions, and that was a big part of the Vision we knew. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they handle that.
Mhm.
Um, Another key point in this episode was how did you feel about Agatha Harkness and like her rise and sort of end in this series? Like,
I mean, I felt like she wasn't really meant to serve much more of a purpose at that point. I definitely feel like there was a disconnection between the story and the plot, in relation to what was actually happening on screen. That made me kind of think that there might be more, again, like I've been saying, that we don't know about, just because of the way that it was handled and the kind of the way they shut her character down. Um, but
yeah,
I definitely don't feel like it was done badly. I feel like it was done really well, and especially considering the fight again, which I've said before, I've liked the fight scenes in that episode.
yeah.
It felt really comic
We
anime
see.
type, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. I get what you mean. Um, I thought the whole her setup in this series is definitely probably for something bigger that we're not seeing yet. Because we see Wanda tell her like that she's gonna make her like a citizen of Westview, and like she's under the spell now as this regular citizen. But before that, Agatha says like you'll need me again. So I have a feeling we'll see her again sometime.
Maybe. I mean,
Um,
it's definitely likely. I mean, again, like I've said before, she's an important character. Even if she's like misguided and bad. I guess by the definition. And it makes me think that maybe she serves a greater purpose later on.
yeah. It could end up being in Doctor Strange too. or some other story later on. Um, Another key point in this episode was, how did you feel about Wanda, and I guess how I wouldn't say conclusion, but like her her build up in this series, like from the start of the series to the end credit scene.
I feel like it was great. I feel like the only really pet peeve that I have is like there's still things that we haven't been answered, in relation to her power and in relation to like kind of how like in my opinion like how they're gonna build it up. I like the costume. The costume looks good. It kind of tells me that hey, maybe we're bound to see more characters like that from the comics, changing costumes and even adding new characters. Because remember that costume is not necessarily all Avenger based, so it definitely kind of hints to hey, like this might be a thing that they might try. Um, and I feel like in relation to her character, it was pretty well developed, especially towards the end of the series. So like the last 3 episodes.
Yeah, it's been 7 years since Winter Soldier, since she was introduced in that end credit scene. That was a whole long ago, so it was nice that after 7 years she finally got her suit. Because I had commented on this before, but a lot of the MCU characters have something unique or um different that makes them stand out. Like costume wise, so it was great to see that she finally got her suit, and it looks really good, and it's a mix of like modernized comic book costume, so I liked it.
Hmm.
Um Now, um going into like the end credit scenes, the first end credit scene, we see Monica approached by this um like officer, and it turns out to be a scroll. Um, and she says like, "I was sent here by a friend of your mother's." How? What do you think that's gonna lean towards or set up?
I mean, honestly, I feel like the actual like friend. I feel like we all know who that is. Um, in relation to the storyline and everything, I feel like that was done well. I mean, who do you think it is? If it's not already obvious to you.
I mean, I'm guessing it's gonna be Captain Marvel. Um, I mean, I think that's the
Really?
most obvious,
Really?
because we know. Sorry, we know this actress is gonna be in Captain Marvel 2, so I'm assuming this is setting up that movie. What do you think?
I mean, it gave me more like I don't I don't want to like say it as if I'm wrong, and I'm possibly wrong, but like I felt like it was more like a sword director type vibe, kind of like sort of like in the comics how like they introduced Nick Fury at one point. I feel like it's gonna be more like a character like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most potential candidates of who that is either Nick Fury or Captain Marvel, because they were pretty much both close to, at least from what we saw in the first Captain Marvel, to Monica Rambeau's mom,
Yeah, I
and
feel
like
like it's
their
more likely.
connection.
I feel like it's more likely Nick Fury. But it could be Captain Marvel.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that could be adding up to what we saw at the end of Far From Home with the two scrolls, and we see Nick Fury at this base in space, so that could be what that's connecting.
Yep.
And it matches well.
Yeah. I just
Now, the second end credit scene, we see this. If you guys didn't notice, but the lake that they shot this at is the same lake that we've seen from the X-Men movies. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but anyways, we see this Wanda like staring off into like the landscape, and then she goes into her cabin, and she's gonna like pour tea, and then the camera pans into this room, and we see that Wanda is like in this sort of um like levitating position, and she's like reading this book of spells, I'm presuming. um what do you think this is setting up?
I definitely think it's a hint to the multiverse in some way. I wouldn't go as far as saying that it is something to do with it, but honestly, like I kind of feel like that's sort of a hint to her power level and kind of what's to come. And then we also another point to this is we do hear someone scream.
Yeah, and that person, those people screaming are her children that we've seen in WandaVision.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense. It kind of makes me feel like they're probably gonna come back in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I don't know like how this is gonna be connected to Spider-Man 3 and Doctor Strange 2, because we know both projects are somehow connected to WandaVision. So in a way it's like a three-part story. So I'm curious as to how that's gonna be set up. Um and it could be the multiverse. You know, she's trying to get her children back, and she's gonna have to lean towards the multiverse to do it.
Yep. And honestly, that's showing that her powers increased.
Yeah, definitely. Um, to finish off, any other like key points or something that stood out to you?
Not really. I feel like it was done well, and I feel like there's really not much else we could have asked for, in relation to focusing on their story.
Yeah. I mean, as a fan, I'm pretty happy and glad with how this series went. That it's definitely one of the more unique projects we've gotten in the MCU, and I definitely will rewatch it some time in the future. You know, because it's pretty enjoyable and it works well. So yeah, I can't wait to see how they continue that story. And you know, in like less than 2 weeks, we have Falcon and Winter Soldier starting up. So you know, the hype is just ramping up again with Marvel. So yeah, looking forward to that. How about you, Stormy?
Um, I mean, like, I'm excited to see like what's to come next, and I know that there's a lot of scheduled things that we're expecting, and maybe even a few surprises there. But I feel like coming forward, it's all gonna be really good at this point.
Yeah. Well, we'll see you guys next week. Um we'll be covering the Snyder Cut and Falcon and Winter Soldier. So yeah, be ready for that. See you guys.